Hello everyone, Prime here. Tyr, or Tiwaz, could be called the Shining One. He could be seen with a spear or a sword. It's true that he had a stump instead of a right hand, courtesy of Fenrir, and he was the god of the sky and a god of war, as well as a god of justice and the law. He proved himself to be the bravest of all of the gods, because not only was he the only god who offered to take care of Loki's son Fenrir, but he was also the only god who was willing to do what had to be done in order to contain Fenrir, as it was feared that he would become a threat. Whether Fenrir would have actually have been a threat or not is up to your interpretation and speculations. The Norse gods didn't see him as anything but a threat and decided to bind with the aid of Tyr. Tyr offered to put his right hand into Fenrir's jaws, as Fenrir required some sort of assurance that the gods weren't playing any tricks on him. When it was found out that the gods indeed meant to bind Fenrir just before he was indeed sealed away, he ripped off Tyr's hand with his mighty jaws, a sacrifice that Tyr would remember for the rest of his days. He may have been one of the many children of Odin, but could also have been the son of a giant named Hymir. The funny thing about this, though, is the fact that Tyr is also considered to be the previous ruler of Asgard prior to Odin. So you can see an issue that this might arise if he was supposed to be the son of Odin, unless, for some reason, Odin decided to let Tyr take the throne before him, even though he was still his son. Sounds a bit weird, doesn't it? The Romans, as I'm pretty sure you're aware at this point, like to consider and compare a lot of the different gods from the different mythologies and match them up with their own gods. Ares and Tyr were matched together because of this. Remember I called him Tiwaz earlier? Well, Tuesday was his day, or Tiwaz Day. So, just like Thor having Thursday, which is pretty nice. He was one of the 7 chosen to have a name after him. Tyr's unnamed wife was the Norse goddess Zisa. She may or may not have been connected to Isis in some way or another, or a Germanic deity that may have been known as Isis. The internet seems to have confused this little bit of information, so that's that. Now, usually I'd end the video here, because unfortunately Tyr suffers from the same thing that all Indawilics suffer from, in that there isn't that much information surrounded him. He's got a very simple role, and he's very simple to understand, which doesn't leave much to be desired, but I do have a story for you. So, sit back, relax, and perhaps get some popcorn, and enjoy. Tyr awakens to a nippling sensation, as if his right hand was still his. He sighed as he said,
"Justice shall be done."
Today would mark change, the end of days, and it was time to gather the men and ready the battle. Heimdall says that he heard the most chilling cry he had ever known earlier. Hell would soon see earth. The ground smothered in flame. Battle cries and desperate wails, deafened only by the sound of clashing steel. The All-Father locked in a death struggle against the mighty wolf, Fenris, his claws stained with blood, his eyes fuming with an orange hue. How many innocents had he slain, whilst justice galloped? How many brave soldiers had filled his belly? A second beast sharing the same blood-drenched claws as the first, savaged Asgardian warriors to his left. Tyr clutched his sword. Every inkling of the law in his body told him to charge Fenrir. But justice compelled him to aid his Asgardian brothers. With a swift thrust of his sword, Tyr earned the beast's attention. The hellhound Gar. It howled in frustration. This new alien sensation would not do. Fear would not do. Maniacally, it rushed forward, leaping at Tyr, who caught the beast's neck with a barbed attachment on his right arm, and slammed it against the ground. Tyr brought down his killing strike. Intercepted by claw, Tyr found himself hurtling through the air as the beast shook its head. Cautiously, this was not a foe that could be torn asunder like the countless souls abandoned by the Allfather. As a recovered Tyr approached, Garm readied himself, and blade locked with claw. Wasting no time, the threat was swallowed whole. Roaring in victory, the mightiest roar to ever scour the earth, Garm had triumphed. His first true fight, a true victory. From inside of the dreadful hellhound Garm, Tyr cut a path through blood and organs, eventually slashing his way out of the beast.
You chose this. Remember that.
Tyr now on his knees. gazing hopelessly at the threat which approached. Fenrir, jaws open wide, as death closed in around him. Tyr closed his eyes and left the rest to justice. An important thing to ask ourselves here is whether or not Tyr actually genuinely loved Fenrir, or was just, throughout the time he cared for him, never connected with him in that way. Because then you could argue that Tyr's rendition of justice was very much balanced, which is fairly important because that way it wouldn't be regulated by his own feelings or opinions, and it wouldn't be his own personal justice, but the justice of Norse mythology, the values that Odin expected to be upheld. Part of the idea behind having things like a judge and a jury is that you have these people who are unbiased towards certain situations and make their judgments based upon the laws and morals and ethics of whatever country they're doing the service in. That way, one side or the other side isn't being unfairly given an advantage or disadvantage, and everything is kept, quote-unquote, just. If justice is rightfulness, or a quality of being righteous, equitable, or morally right, is it really right for Tyr then to side with the gods in an attempt to try and prevent Ragnarok, considering the fact that Ragnarok is part of a necessary cycle in Norse mythology? In this case, is Tyr's rendition of justice wrong? There was a comment a few videos ago that brought up the idea that if the Norse gods didn't treat Fenrir as if he was this massive doomsday threat alert, that perhaps maybe Fenrir would not have turned against them come Ragnarok. Perhaps he would have fought with them at Ragnarok, because Fenrir was not the ultimate reason why Ragnarok began. Loki was ahead of him in the pecking order as far as that was concerned, and above Loki was Nidhogg, chewing through Yggdrasil, which was the ultimate cause, as far as I know, of Ragnarok. But an ally is an ally, and Fenrir, responsible for the deaths of several of the people on the side of the Norse gods, including Odin himself, and perhaps Tyr, depending on the variation of the myth you go with. Otherwise, Tyr died by Garm's hand. And so ultimately, should Tyr, in some way or another, be blind, or ultimately balanced? Or is the way that Tyr is in Norse mythology absolutely fine? Let me know what you think about this in the comment section below. Well, I hope you enjoyed that video, guys. If you did, go ahead and leave a like. Share the video if you feel like it deserves it, and of course if you're new, subscribe to the channel. Apollo was so close to being chosen, but literally he got one less vote than Tyr. So, of course, I'll be adding Serket to the polls this time, so the gods that we can choose from are Apollo, Zeus, and Serket. So if you'd like to see one of those gods goddesses be chosen for me to cover in the next lore video of this type, then go ahead and vote in the polls. Or if you'd like to see a different god entirely, go ahead and leave a request in the comment section below. And of course the most voted comment will of course be shown next. So until the next video, thank you very much for watching. I've been Prime, and I'll see you in a few. Bye bye.